going to make a couple of announcements for those of you who still haven't gotten it figured out. First of all, welcome. Thank you once again for giving us part of your sunshine on a Tuesday. I want to remind you that tomorrow at 9 o'clock in 2015 Schultz, we will be showing Into the Arms of Strangers. Chitay's going to start the film. I will be there. One of the things we're going to do today is hand out the final. And so if you have any questions, you can ask them tomorrow. Then we're going to do the next showing at 4 o'clock on Thursday, same time, same place, different time, and that is from 4 to 6:15. We're going to hand out the final exam today. If Barbara hasn't caught you yet, she does have some papers. Do you have some left to hand back? That's all my notes. Now I want to tell you that we have a special treat. Our speaker has some connections to two of the sociology faculty. And Andy Roth worked together as colleagues at Pomona College. And the person who's going to introduce her, James Dean, was her undergraduate student at Claremont? Pomona College. So I'm going to have James has the honor of introducing our speaker today, Lynn Rappaport. Okay, James.
So on behalf of the 23rd Annual Sonoma State University Holocaust Lecture Series, it is my great pleasure to present Lynn Rappaport. Professor Rappaport is professor of sociology at Pomona College and an expert on the Holocaust, genocide, and cultural sociology. Her talk today, entitled Hollywood's Holocaust, Schindler's List and the Construction of Memory, is an excellent example of her current research interests and how the Holocaust is portrayed in popular culture, ranging from its depiction in movies, TV, comic strips, as well as other mediums. Moreover, today's talk builds on Professor Rappaport's incisive analysis of the Holocaust as a practice of collective memory that shapes, constrains, and continues to organize Jewish and non-Jewish life today. In her book, Jews in Germany After the Holocaust, Memory, Identity, and Jewish-German Relations, she lucidly illustrates how everyday interaction and recreate the collective memory of the Holocaust today, illustrating that no aspect of German social life is untouched by this event, whether it is in definitions of citizenship, the formations of friendship, or relations of love and intimacy. She demonstrates that Jewish German individuals continue to negotiate the pain, tragedy, and indelible memory of this event. And I feel fortunate to have her here today to share her thoughts with us, as Lynn was my undergraduate advisor and my role model who cemented my decision to become a sociologist. So now, without further ado, let me present Professor Lynn Rappaport.
Can you hear me? I'd like to thank Myrna for inviting me, and Andy Roth and James Dean for being excited about me. And I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to meet all of you wonderful students and members of the community. Can you hear me okay? One day in 1980, a well-known Australian writer, Thomas Keneally, visited a leather goods store in Beverly Hills, California, to inquire about the prices of briefcases. Amidst the shelves of imported Italian leather goods, look. It was through this chance encounter that Keneally first heard of Oskar Schindler, as Poldick was a Schindler survivor. Drawing on interviews with 50 Schindler survivors who were wartime associates and friends of Schindler, and many testimonies deposited at Yad Vashem by Jews saved by Schindler, as well as visiting locations with Poldick that figure prominently in the book, Keneally uses the texture and devices of a novel to tell a true story. I have attempted and of other witnesses to Oscar's acts of outrageous rescue. Sidney Sheinberg, president of MCA, purchased the screen rights to Keneally's book, believing it was a perfect vehicle for his protege, Steven Spielberg. Steve Zaillian wrote the screenplay, and it would take 10 years before Spielberg began shooting the film. I didn't go to work on it right away because I didn't know how to do it, he said in a televised interview. The story didn't have the same shape as the other watched the film. It had by far the biggest audience of any non-sports program on television that season, and according to Nielsen Media Research, 34% of the homes watching television that night were tuned to Schindler's List. By using Schindler's List as an example and comparing the book to the screenplay and the film, I would like to present some of the controversy surrounding whether it is appropriate to deal with the topic of the Holocaust in popular culture. Drama, fiction, poetry, song, film, monuments, museums, photographs, commemoration ceremonies, diaries, testimonies, and other cultural artifacts. What are the particular meanings or representations inherent in these objects of the past? And how do they uncover truths about the contours of particular social worlds and historical traditions? Moreover, what is the relationship between the past and the present? Is the past something that's at a discrete moment in time and thus shapes the present? Or might the past be something that actually exists in the present when we use memory to think and imagine things that existed in the past? How does individual memory relate to collective memory, or I prefer to use the term collective memories, the various memories that exist in our culture that might be active, prominent, or contested at any given time. Groups and societies choose to remember is a political question just as much as what they choose to forget. And societies create their own memories that can be manipulated based on current political, cultural, and/or social interests. Nowhere else is this tension between memory, history, representation, and meaning more politically and morally charged than in questions of Holocaust representation. Its necessity, its possibility, its implications, its limits. Can the Holocaust be represented? And if so, how? Who has the legitimacy to tell the story, and within which medium? Is there one story or many stories, and how do these stories converge or diverge and ultimately impact the way we view and understand this traumatic past? Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel insists that the Holocaust cannot be represented because he argues that whoever has not lived through the event can never know it, and whoever has lived through the event can never fully reveal it. He calls for a taboo on Holocaust representation, as words are simply insufficient to describe the enormity and uniqueness of the event, and images cannot convey the unimaginable. There is no such thing as Holocaust literature. There cannot be, Wiesel argues. Auschwitz negates all literature as it negates all theories, doctrines. To lock it into a philosophy is to restrict it. To substitute words, any words, is to distort it. A Holocaust literature, the very term, he argues, is a contradiction. Nevertheless, the taboo on Holocaust representation has been violated repeatedly by the numerous depictions that have appeared in film, television, novels, and testimonies. For example, the survivors of the Shoah Visual History Foundation has videotaped Europe and Israel. Critics have found it particularly troubling when the Holocaust has been represented in popular culture. Filmmakers, novelists, poets, painters, composers, and others have been wrestling with the possibility or the impossibility of treating radical evil in art. Adorno's notion that there cannot be any art after Auschwitz, and Sartre's notion of the impossibility of receiving pleasure from work based on the Holocaust are particularly relevant. The Mengele twins have appeared on Geraldo, and Holocaust survivors have appeared as celebrities on shows like Oprah, Sally Jesse Raphael, etc. Films like The X-Men and Chicken Run incorporate Holocaust themes. There is a rap group called Concentration Camp that has an album entitled The Holocaust. What does it mean when Elie Wiesel throws the ceremonial first pitch of the New York Mets 1998 season? Even Superman has traveled back in time to Nazi-occupied Poland, and once realizing the extent of the Nazis' depravity, has declared war on them. Superman's job is going to be bringing down this Third Reich, he says in one thought balloon. And I'm actually doing some research right now on these Superman comic books. I've brought you a couple of them. These came out in the 1990s. It came out number 7. Tourists are invited to visit the local Holocaust Museum, where for $39.95 they can purchase a scale model replica of a Polish boxcar once used by the Nazis to transport Jews and others to the concentration camps. Or for a minimum museum donation of $5,000, they receive a genuine spike from Treblinka that's preserved in lucite. So these are commodities now that you can buy, like souvenirs. I wanted to mention another project briefly that I had worked on a couple of years ago, which is a whole industry of Holocaust pornography that emerged in the 1970s, where the Holocaust and concentration camps were being used as sites for, let's say, sexual antics between prisoners and guards. DVD, and I think it won the best porno film award for whatever the awards are in that industry. And I had a couple of students working with me on it. And since I live in Los Angeles, the pornography industry is very popular there. And we were able to track down the director, a couple of the actors in the film, and actually the woman who starred as representative. Popular culture reaches a far broader audience than scholarly works. I believe it's important to study popular culture. Even the Superman comic books that I'm passing around are really representations and narratives that are created by our culture that tell a Holocaust story. Schindler's List has been the most widely successful and watched film on the Holocaust to date. I ask, to what extent does... Somebody showed me the light, but I don't remember how to turn it on. How do I turn it on? What button? Oh, this button here. Okay. Okay, there are going to be some clips. Hopefully it'll be muted. I'm going to start here. It'll follow. It'll catch up.
Wait. She can't see.
Hollywood conventional formula. They summarize what will take place within a film in the first and last 5 minutes. For instance, the film opens with a flick of a match as candles are lit. Light struck against darkness is a metaphor for memory, as in the lighting of the yahrzeit candles. The camera focuses on the flames burning brightly in a family gathered around a table. It is not a yahrzeit prayer that is being chanted until it burns out. The smoke from the burnt car story begins after the Germans invaded Poland. There are also numerous symbolic repetitions at various points throughout the film. There are 2 repetitions of shots of color appearing against black and white footage. One is of a little girl in a red coat, which I will speak about later, and the other occurs late in the film when Schindler asks a rabbi who is working in his factory what day it is. The rabbi says he doesn't know, and Schindler tells him it's Friday and he should be getting ready for the Sabbath. The scene shows the lighting of the candle begin in color, perhaps to symbolize the rebirth of Jewish life once again. We are also throughout the film hearing people call out their names, followed by close-up camera shots of the names being typed on a manual typewriter onto a list. This repetitive technique appears at various points throughout the film as Jews are continually being registered for work, for deportation, or for Oskar Schindler. Seeing people give only their names and having close-ups of the names being typed or in Jaws, we were frightened by the ultimate monster, the shark. The film E.T. endeared us to the ultimate alien, childlike, helpless, and lovable E.T. Spielberg combines these archetypes in Schindler's List by providing an archetypical hero, Oskar Schindler, a movie monster, Nazi Eamon Goeth, and the ultimate alien, annoyed by Nazi interference with his workers, both Jewish and German, and the overall social and historical Jews. Officials who cover a spectrum of positions toward Nazism and toward Jews, some at various times even showing acts of sympathy toward Jews. As Christopher Browning has documented, Nazis in the police battalions were basically ordinary men following orders. In the film, however, Goeth represents the Nazi machinery personified. He is evil, unidimensional, and all the Nazi characters in the book are collapsed into Goeth as he becomes our 20th century official as a thug, corrupt, and psychopathic. We see him lounging shirtless on his balcony, entertaining himself by randomly shooting Jews. He makes love to a German woman and immediately thereafter pees into the toilet, as if expunging himself of anything tender or human. He speaks in a menacing Austrian accent, delights in cruelty, and shudders at his attraction for his Jewish housekeeper, Helen Hirsch. In the book, by the way, his relationship with the bear to collapse because they are not being built properly. Goeth turns to the SS officer and calmly tells him on his authority to shoot her, then and there. Goeth is informed that they really need her, to which he insists that she be killed anyway. Goeth has no reservations about having murdered in full view, and he expresses his special hatred for the only shot of color of the ghetto with consternation and disbelief. The little girl becomes a visual metaphor representing the Jews, or the universal victim, childlike and female, thus innocent, passive, and powerless. In the book, the girl has a name, Genya, and she is older than the child in the film. The turning point for Schindler is completed later in the film as we watch as Schindler notices her being carted away in a pile of corpses. His physical proximity to the little girl is much issues at hand. The eye-catching violation of her red coat against the black and white film is laden again with a more substantive message. She is a reference point. Schindler realizes he must act soon or Jews will die, and thus he begins to purchase them. We as spectators are watching the rescuer. We are seeing the world through his point of view. We are witnessing his visual experience and participating in his subjectivity. We know more than he does as we know the history and the outcome precisely because he is in action, moving and transforming instead of awaiting and enduring. While Schindler and Goeth are portrayed as binary opposites, there are also certain parallels. They both drink wine, admire women, consider the profits of the war machine, and help each other out of binds with the German bureaucracy. In the book, we learn that they both have similar Roman Catholic backgrounds and similar educations. Spielberg's camera juxtaposes the two. I think you saw those shots and victims, Goeth gazing from the balcony, Schindler from atop of the hill, overlooking the liquidation of the Krakow ghetto, and their interactions with Helen Hirsch and the women in general. The Jews in Schindler's List are irrelevant to the major drama, except that they are the object that is fought over. In the book, Itzhak Stern does not play as prominent a role in the story, and there are other Jews who have significant relationships with Oskar Schindler. The story thus becomes Schindler's right hand, comes to embody Schindler's relationship to the Jews that he saves. The rest of the Jews portrayed in the film are fairly nondescript. They appear as anonymous figures or stereotypes. The men are depicted in money deals and other sorts of scheming, the women as temptresses and seductresses. Stern, the only Jewish character developed at any length, is a professional bookkeeper whose expression throughout the film rarely changes. In the contest between the two, it is Schindler who prevails and who at the film is properly the recipient of the rescued Jews' gratitude, respect, and love. Through the icon of a gold ring, remember they give him a gold ring, the Schindler-Juden in effect marry themselves to this man out of heartfelt gratitude for his righteous deeds. This is the only scene in the film where Schindler loses his composure and breaks down, and while the camera angle on Schindler throughout the film was shot looking up at him, the camera in this scene is the only looking down on him. And in the final cemetery scene, which you saw, the camera pans over the crosses in Jerusalem's Latin cemetery, coming to rest on the grave sites where Schindler himself is buried. The film is now in color again, and these same Jews walking with their families and the actors who portrayed them pay their respects to the memory of their Savior through the ritualistic placing of tokens of honor and love on his grave. Both scenes convey affiliation and bring to culmination the career of a man who, however flawed in character, is nothing short of a saintly hero. Spielberg reminds us with a title card of historical information that over 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust. Yet is the audience moved to tears over the death of 6 million Jews, or are they crying over the death of Oskar Schindler? Is Schindler's List a story about Oskar Schindler, or is it a Holocaust? Can it be both, or is crossing this boundary problematic? Moreover, what is the relationship between fact and fiction? While the book won the Booker Prize in Fiction, Keneally refers to it as faction, an historical novel. Indeed, the copyright page of a recent edition states the standard disclaimer. This book is products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual events or locales or persons, living or dead, is entirely coincidental. Steve Zalian, the screenwriter, and Steven Spielberg take excerpts from the book, recreate the scenes, many of which are out of chronological order, collapse the Nazi war machine into a movie monster, the Jews into the character of Itzhak Stern, and have Schindler represent a semblance. People who see Spielberg's film might leave thinking they've witnessed or somehow know the story of the Holocaust, or at least that of Oskar Schindler. While Schindler's List is indeed based on a true story, does the audience forget about its fictionalized dramatization when movie reviewers portray the film as a dramatic true account of a German industrialist, a feature film of a true story, or the true Spielberg's film might leave thinking they have witnessed or somehow know the story of the Holocaust, and they might forget that Amblin Entertainment are the first words depicted on the screen as the film begins. Spielberg uses his prodigious movie-making skills to put you inside the horror of the Holocaust, writes one film critic. What Spielberg has done in this Holocaust story is simply and forcefully place us there, in Krakow, in the ghetto, writes, I was witnessing firsthand. I think I can speak for the whole crew when I say the experience was sobering. Most significantly, Schindler's List is a happily ever after story. It is a story of rescue and survival, which is not the story of the Holocaust. It is a story of Germans saving Jews, at least the Jews one comes to care about in the movie. Even the anti-hero, Eamon Goeth, Helena. There is an uplifting Hollywood ending. Some 1,100 Jews on Schindler's List survive. Eamon Goeth is punished, and Jewish survivors immigrate to Israel. The film's slogan, "The list is life," is the complete opposite of the most typical Jewish Holocaust experience, which is execution, starvation, and death. The film de-emphasizes the most important aspect of the genocide. The film does not focus on death, dying, or genocide. It is only in the final caption that the title card mentions that 6 million Jews perished. What message is given to future generations by putting a redemptive spin on history's darkest years? How troubling is it to rely on Schindler's List as a vehicle for educating younger generations and for creating and preserving a past version of history have on our understanding of history and our consciousness? Oprah Winfrey, U.S. television's most popular talk show host, declared on national television that the mere act of watching Schindler's List has made her a better person, and she went on to chastise her audience for not having made time to see it. Christopher Mealy, who watched the movie Schindler's List for the first time in 1966, said that the film inspired historical ledgers and documents that a Swiss bank was about to shred that provided evidence of Swiss involvement with Nazi Germany. And in August 1999, J. Lawrence Keshner, a circuit judge in Madison County, Illinois, ordered 4 men who burned a cross in a black family's yard to watch movies such as Holocaust stories. Films based on true events might fictionalize them in order to produce drama, to telescope time, to avoid being filled up with too many minor characters, or simply to be more entertaining. Feature films are also commercial endeavors with commercial interests. Given box office dependence on sex, violence, a simple plot, action, and entertainment intersect with telling a story about the Holocaust. Lawrence Barron calculates that since 1945, the corpus of Holocaust feature films worldwide totals nearly 500 movies. Likewise, in While America Watches, Jeffrey Chandler traces the numerous representations of the Holocaust or Holocaust-related. Zelazar shows that since 1945, our visual depiction of the Holocaust in photographs has become increasingly simplified. Only a handful of images have been produced and reproduced in newspapers and the mass media and thus become reinforced in our minds. Is there a sacredness about the Holocaust that commercializing it or popularizing it ends up trivializing it, making it part of that show business, so to say? Now we can even ask whether there are trivializations of the film Schindler's List. For example, while East German Katharina Witt and American Paul Wiley were each praised independently for ice skating to Schindler's List at various national and international competitions, France's synchronized swimming team won a gold medal in bad taste when their sports minister, Guy Drutt, forced them to scrap a routine that they planned on performing for the 1996 central vehicle for teaching new generations about the Holocaust. Feature films play a particularly prominent role in this endeavor since they are so widely distributed, so widely viewed, and easily digested. Indeed, the 1994 American Jewish Committee survey on what Americans know about the Holocaust found that twice as many Americans gained their knowledge about the Holocaust from television and movies than from books. For example, while 43% of adults murdered during the Holocaust, yet 19% did not believe that this happened during the Second World War, and another 19% were not sure. In conclusion, I must leave you with more questions than answers. In my own research, I hope to analyze how the Holocaust has been portrayed in popular culture over the course of 5 decades, depicting changes in its representation and meaning. While I believe its representation tells us something about the Holocaust, it also tells us about ourselves. Books, novels, films, museums, plays, and other types of cultural artifacts are means by which societies act out cultural practices of remembrance, representation, and commemoration. They are also means by which we try to work through traumatic events like the Holocaust and other genocides, which unfortunately continue to be part of our human condition. Finally, I will take on Levy's challenge regarding monitoring and thinking critically about Holocaust representations. I invite you to please do the same. Thank you. I'm happy to answer.
Okay, I'm sure there's some questions.
I'm happy to answer any questions. Has everybody seen Schindler's List?
How many people have seen Schindler's List? Okay, do you mind if I ask the question? How many of you have read Anne Frank, The Diary of Anne Frank?
Have you thought about these issues with Schindler's List or with The Diary of Anne Frank?
Okay.
Well, I read an article, and I showed it to Myrna, saying that it was about the longevity. These films are coming out about that. I wanted to know if these still claiming survivors and how their reactions to the films.
I think that there's a mixed reaction, and it also depends upon which film you're talking about. And I would say that in terms of, let's say, Schindler's List, there are millions of stories out there, and I know that Spielberg has gone around and started taping. You know, you have films like Life is Beautiful, which was very controversial among Holocaust circles. I know of Holocaust survivors that walked out of the film thinking that how can you make a comedy out of the Holocaust. I personally didn't have as much of a problem with Life is Beautiful as I did with Schindler's List. And for me, Life is Beautiful almost seemed like a love story between a father and a child, that it obviously was not a true story. What concerns me the most about Schindler's List is that it's filmed to be like a documentary. It's one story of the Holocaust. It's not even an accurate story. There's this meshing of fact and fiction. And I was in Krakow a couple of years ago where I was just astonished because there were signs up.
By bringing focus, that's good. And then maybe out of that, maybe somebody will be impelled to go out and actually look at the real thing. Read books by Wiesel or Primo Levi and people like that. So I think focus, it's almost like half a loaf is not such a bad thing.
Yeah, no, you know what, I agree with you, and so there's an ambivalence there, because one thing that Schindler's List did do.
And it has been said that the reason a dying person is confronted to us is because it's a mirror. It's a reminder that someday we'll be in that same situation. And since it's demonstrated that we have difficulty with that on a one-on-one basis, even in a very peaceful family scene, it's not surprising to me that being confronted with 6 million deaths is totally overwhelming. And that trivialization is as sad.
If you want your final,